There are mornings that arrive quietly. Mist sitting low over paddocks, birdsong tending through the air. A kettle clicks off somewhere, a door opens. Footsteps cross dew-wet grass. Lunch is packed, shoes are tied. Keys are picked up without thinking. It's the kind of morning that does not ask for attention. The kind you move through on instinct. The kind that feels like everyone before it. Until it isn't. Welcome to If These Trees Could Talk.
We would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which this story is grounded, the Gunai people of Gippsland. We also acknowledge that we are recording today on Wooreen country and we pay our respects to their elders past and present. We recognise the enduring connection First Nations people have to land, waterways, stories and spirit. As we speak today about place, memory and what is held in the landscape, we acknowledge that country has always been a living archive, carrying knowledge, resilience and truth long before this story and long after it. We are grateful to be able to listen, reflect and share stories on this land.
Don't do anything stupid, Teach, or I'll shoot you. My heart started thumping at that point. Is this real? Is this a joke? Just do what I say and no one's going to get hurt.
And then the angels show up. Today we are heading into the rolling hills of South Gippsland. Wooreen, Victoria is the kind of place where life moves gently, where neighbours know each other's names, paddocks stretch towards the horizon, and quiet is part of the landscape. It's a town shaped by farming community and long-held routines, a place where ordinary days are deeply cherished. And it's here, in this peaceful setting, that an extraordinary story took root. In 1977, just days into his first teaching job, a young teacher walked into a small classroom in his community expecting nothing more than an ordinary day. His name is Rob Hunter. What happened next would place him at the centre of one of Australia's most confronting hostage situations, an experience that would shape the course of his life in ways few of us can imagine. In the years since, Rob has dedicated himself to helping others, understanding trauma, resilience and emotional well-being. He's the author of Day 9 at Wooreen and the founder of the Kidnap Teacher Talks program, where he works with schools and communities to support people navigating life after adversity. But today's conversation isn't about headlines, labels or achievements. It's about listening to a story rooted in place, memory and lived experience, listening to what happens when ordinary life is interrupted, listening to the quiet strength it takes to carry something like this forward. We're honoured that Rob has trusted us with his story, and we are grateful that you are here to hear it. Welcome, Rob.
Hi, Shannon. Hi, Megan. And hi, listeners.
As a mum of three who have small children, they're grown-up children now, but when they were small, they attended a small school. It was a little rural primary school. So there were elements of your experience that had me holding my breath when I listened to it. I have to say before we start, what an extraordinary group of kids you had with you that day.
Yeah, gorgeous bunch of kids. 9 of them. Yeah, a little family really. A little family, all of them related one way or another. They were all related to someone. They weren't all related to each other, but yeah, the 3 grade 6s and the 2 grade 5 children were the leaders, and they were looking after those younger ones throughout that time. And yeah, there was a gorgeous little atmosphere in the school in those first 8 days leading up to that ninth day.
So while we're there at the beginning, let's give our listeners a little bit of a picture of who you were back then as a young teacher starting out in that role.
Yeah, so I was 20 years of age. I'd done my 3 years of teacher training. I grew up in a little country town called Kyabram, halfway between Shepparton and Echuca in northern Victoria, on a dairy farm. I loved life, loved the farm, loved the animals, loved hay carting, loved milking cows, loved riding motorbikes, and had lots of friends, played cricket and footy, and involved in the local community, church. Faith was a big part of the family. Yeah, I felt like I'd had an ideal or perfect childhood, really, or upbringing. And 3 years of teacher training had gone really well. Loved it. Beautiful friends, musical productions, and all sorts of other things that we got involved in. And found myself in a one teacher school as the headmaster of 9 children, only adult. I'm it. I'm the art teacher, the cleaner, the maths teacher, the English teacher, the music teacher, the PE teacher, the lot, Yeah, that gives people probably a bit of an idea of what led into this.
I love small school environments. I'm quite passionate about them, obviously, with my kids attending a small school. Can you give us an idea of what life at your school looked like? So, what would we notice if we were just walking in with you on any given day?
Yeah, I'd be working with 1 or 2 or 3 year levels, and the other 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 year levels would be working independently. Yeah, so because I only had those 8 days prior to the night day nine, I'm pretty vague right now as to the way in which I structured my classroom, but I was relying on the fact that these older children were very good kids and well behaved, and they were in some ways leading the way.
Yeah. Where was the first moment that you thought today's different to the previous 8 days?
At 10:30 a.m., I let the children out for recess, and moments later they came racing back inside, saying, Mr. Hunter, there's a man outside with a gun." I didn't think too much of it. I'd grown up with Dad had a rifle, and people went shooting at different times, and so I just thought maybe someone wanted to shoot a rabbit. I went to the door, and that's when it hit me. This balaclava hooded man puffing, forcefully entering, pointing a gun directly at my chest, saying, "Get back inside or I'll fucking shoot you." Oh, I did what he said. So yeah, I was. My heart started thumping at that point. Oh, what am I supposed to do here?
We have quite a few educators that are part of our audience, and I can see Megan just kind of sitting here going, "Oh my God." And I imagine that there would be a few people listening thinking, what would I do in that situation? What was going through your head at that time?
Nothing bad had ever happened in my whole life, it seemed, up to this point. Yeah, I'd been in a fight once. There'd been a few kids that I was a bit scared of in high school. I'd played a footy roughly, and I didn't mind a bit of argy-bargy, but I'd never been threatened with a gun so I was caught with my pants down, really. was that the element of surprise was something else. So the children are all come in and they're all sitting back in their seats, in their home seats, and I'm told to sit in a particular spot. And I'm thinking, is this real? Is this bloke? Is this a joke? But as time went by and a few lines got spoken, okay, this bloke is actually fair income here. Don't do anything stupid, teach, or I'll shoot you. Was the classic line, and the children were asking questions because initially he said, just do what I say, and no one's going to get hurt. I'm not a bad man. I don't want to hurt you, but if you do the wrong thing, someone's going to get hurt, and it'll be him, the teacher. That was the threat to the children. And so then the kids say, various things like, where are you going to take us? Why are you taking us away? What for? How long for? And then the classic line was, Brett, one of my grade 4 student, who was a little honey, says, "Have you done this before?" and and he says, "No, I read about it in the paper," or something like that. In actual fact, he had done this before. This was round 2. And yeah, so one of the other things that was going through my mind was I could tell that the children are looking at me. They're looking at him. They're weighing things up. And it was like, Mr. Hunter, come on, do something. This is my 9th day in that building. My 9th day at Wooreen. Those grade 6 kids had been there for 11, this is their 7th year at the school. So they knew the normal routine. Here's me, I'm the green one, and I'm trying to play catch up.
How's the level of responsibility feel in that moment when you know you're responsible for those 9 children, but your life's at risk as well? How do you reconcile that?
Yeah, sense of responsibility. It was overpowering, really. I describe it in the book, that the duck paddling under the water, and on the surface it's cruising beautifully, but underneath it's, and that was me. I deliberately stayed calm. I just sat and listened and watched, but underneath, my heart's thumping, and I'm thinking, I've got to do something. I've got to do the right thing here. This is a crisis. So, I said to this intruder, I use the word intruder only because he was the kidnapper, but at that point, he's just an intruder. Can I write you out a check? I had a checkbook which I could write out whatever I wanted. Well, in actual fact, I needed the school council president's signature as well, but I wasn't going to tell him that. I can write you out a check. How much would you like? And he said, no, mate, that's not the sort of money I want. So I tried that little trick, but that wasn't suffice. So I'm then hoping maybe someone will turn up. Maybe one of the parents or a visitor will come to, to support me here, or short circuit what looked like was going to happen. Yeah.
When that kid asked, have you done this before? This man had done this before. I'm assuming you had no idea who he was in those moments.
No idea whatsoever. I had remembered, it happened when I was in year 11. I remembered Mary Gibbs being kidnapped by Edwin John Eastwood at Faraday, just out of Bendigo. I remembered it quite well. It was all over the news, but it was not on my mind at that point.
So just so the listeners have an idea, on October 6, 1972, so that's 5 years before Wooreen played out, Edward John Eastwood and his partner, Robert Clyde Boland, kidnapped a 19-year-old teacher, Mary Gibbs, and 6 female students from their school. I believe that he asked for $1 million reward, and I think the government at the time were actually thinking about paying the ransom, which may have led to some of his thought patterns around why he might try this again. He was convicted of that crime and was in Geelong prison before he escaped in the December prior to his hostage situation at Wooreen.
With the government's response with that money, Shannon, Lindsay Thompson was offering himself in place of the hostages, and he and Mick Miller, the Chief Commissioner of Police, had gone all the way up to Bendigo, prepared to with the money, with the cash, but were also Lindsay Thompson was prepared to offer himself in place of the hostages.
That's a pretty brave offer to put forward.
Yeah, yeah. And he was preparing to do that for me too, for the Wooreen one, or he was willing to. It never got to that point, but that was on his mind. That was what he was going to do.
Was Lindsay Thompson the Premier?
He was the education minister at that time, but ultimately he became the Premier.
Yeah, okay.
Wow.
So he escaped from Geelong prison and he had been out for like a couple of months before he showed up on your doorstep.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I hadn't heard anything about his escape, and it had hit the news, obviously, and then he committed numerous crimes on the way to getting to Wooreen that morning. He'd stolen a string of vehicles. He'd done a breaking and entry, and that very morning he had also stolen some things from the Ballara General Store.
So we've got you and the kids in the classroom. He's making demands. When do you know that this is a bit more than just a guy that's, a bit unhinged and things start to propel forward? Because what comes next for you guys is one of the most horrific accounts that I've ever heard of.
Yeah, so he pulls these chains out of his bag and tells me, the teacher, "Okay, teach, lie down on the floor at the front. There's a little stage about 10 inches up above like a platform. And so lie down there, mate." And so I lay down on my back. He said, "Not on your back, on your front. Hands out above your head." And then he proceeded to chain me up with this padlock on this big long chain. And then once he'd finished chaining me, he then began to chain the kids. But I was pretty naive. It wasn't until I started to write the book 37 years later, 38, 39, 40 years later, that I realised how intrusive and, the children's teacher was being chained up by this masked gunman in front of them. It was demeaning. I just took it at face value on February the 14th, 1977, at 10:45 a.m. Okay, I'll basically do what you said because I'm not going to cause a scene here. I don't want gunfire, So, it was pretty invasive.
What was his plan? What happened next?
Yeah, so we all get chained, and he's hidden his vehicle around the side road. So he had to leave us momentarily while he went and got his vehicle. He'd hidden his vehicle, obviously, because he didn't want it seen in front of the school, so that it became a suspicious sight when we were all missing. So he chains me up to the wall on a quite a sturdy coat hanger bag hook, and I'm chained there. And I've got my hands sort of suspended in midair, and the children are all along behind me on this big long chain. And before he leaves, he says, don't you try anything smart. And I'm thinking, yeah, well, I'm going to try something. I don't know what I'm going to try, but I'll try something. And there's a phone in the office, but he knew that the phone was a key link. He went to the phone and he ripped the microphone out of the mouthpiece, which he said, sorry guys, you're going to need a new phone. Well, that was one of the thoughts I had. One of the kids could go and make a phone call. And then the other comment was, don't you start writing any notes because I'll be watching. I felt a bit armless. Anyway, he leaves the building, and he's asked the children to all sit down while he's gone to get his vehicle. And I said, kids, stand up, walk outside as far as the chain will go, and start waving your hands at any car that comes past. Well, that freaked them out. No, Mr. Honey, he'll come back and he'll shoot us. Okay, don't worry. It'll be okay. Let's just stay calm and we'll do what he says. Yeah, so that was sort of what happened. But just near where I was chained to the wall, there was a clock, electric clock, plugged in near my foot. And I thought, okay, beauty, I'll try and unplug that when I get a chance. I thought about it recently and I thought I could have got one of those kids to pull it out. But as it was, he came back in and he unchained me and turned his back on me. And that was when I pulled the clock out. So it stopped at around about 11 o'clock.
And that then helped the police later on to figure out what time you guys had left that classroom. So it was incredibly quick thinking on your behalf when you were trying to give some indication, because parents were going to turn up to pick up their kids in the afternoon and no one was going to be there. Well done, Rob. That's pretty incredible.
It's very kind of you to say that was quick thinking. That's the extent of my heroism in this whole ordeal, I can tell you. There was nothing else much that I did that was ingenious other than basically staying calm.
Yeah, which I think is super important in that kind of situation. So he then piled you guys into the car.
Yeah, well, he changed his mind about me. He says, I've changed my mind about you, Teach. And I'm thinking, oh, God, what's going to happen? Is he going to get rid of me? Is he going to put a bullet through my head? And he unchained me and he blindfolded me, gagged me and tied my hands behind my back and separated me from the children and put me in the front of the vehicle on the floor in the passenger side, and the children were all in the back in this covered Dodge utility, separated from us. I couldn't communicate with them and they couldn't communicate with us. Yeah, so piled us all in and then off he went. Left a note on the door, which I happened to have seen before I got blindfolded. I don't think I fully realised what the note said, but in essence, the note said, gone on a nature study walk, be back in 1 hour. When I saw the note, I thought, oh gosh, he's thought this through. If parents come, for a dental appointment or for a late lunch or something, they're not even going to worry about us not being there. It's not going to be until 3:30, which is what ended up happening. Parents arrived at 3:30. So yeah, off we set in this utility, going along this what's called the Grand Ridge Road, which follows the top of the Strzelecki Ranges through that part of South Gippsland. It's quite a precipitous area of Gippsland. Beautiful trees and an environment. Um, Dirt road all the way, up and down and around. He drove very fast, and it was quite scary.
I was going to say, under any other circumstance, it would be an absolutely beautiful drive. But for you guys, it was anything but.
Yeah, yeah. And I had no idea where in the hell I was. We stopped, and as it turned out, it was the ransom letter that he posted. He stopped, and I think he said to me, "I've got to post a letter." And he might have told me that it was the ransom letter. I'm not sure now, but when the word ransom was used, I'm thinking, "Gosh, I've heard of that. What does that mean?"
And it was pretty
Um,
unhinged what he asked for.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, a whole list of incredibly stupid demands. The biggest one being the release of 17 of his friends from Pentridge prison.
Yeah. And a
And the
ton
key
of
one,
drugs and money. And I think at Faraday it was $1 million he asked for. And then he went to prison for that. And then with you guys, it was $7 million and a ton of cocaine or heroin or something. And all of these criminals, all of the criminals to be released. Like,
yeah,
to think about that with a rational mind, it just seems impossible. But I suppose hostage negotiation wasn't that big of a thing in the 70s in Australia.
no, no. Well, the key thing from his point of view was the release of Robert Boland, who had been his accomplice in Faraday at the Faraday kidnapping, and Eastwood believed that Boland was innocent. Whether he was partly innocent, I never really fully found out, but it seemed as if he was at least partially guilty. So Eastwood was angry at the authorities. He reckoned that Boland had been framed. So he wanted his release, number one. And that was the biggest motivation for his repeating of the crime.
Mm. So from that spot where he stopped, what's this trip like for you guys from there on?
Yeah, well, as I said, I had no idea where we were. I didn't know Gippsland. All I knew was Merbau North and Leongatha and Wooreen, really. I'd only been there for, less than 2 weeks. Um, and we're going around bends, around mountains, up and over hills that were foreign to me. So I had absolutely no clue where on earth we could have been heading. And we drive for 2.5 hours before we come to a stop, because we've had an accident.
And it
We
wasn't
plough
just
into
casual
a lot of,
driving, was it? Like, he was driving like a maniac.
yeah, the kids are crying in the back. They're vomiting. I've vomited. I've made an absolute mess of myself. Yeah, they're banging on the partition. Stop, stop. We're being sick. We need a drink. How much further we got to go? And Eastwood just told them, be quiet. We've got a long way to go yet.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So at some stage along that track, I call out to God basically and say, God help us. Well, I don't know how long it would have been after that sort of cry for help, but a miracle took place and we ploughed into this logging truck while we're going around the only hairpin bend of the area. We had hardly passed a vehicle throughout this time. We just happened to collide with this timber jinger logging truck driven by Robin Smith, who became the perfect person. We could have all been killed in this moment. Our vehicle gets pushed over the edge of the road, our back wheels hanging in midair. We're balancing on the verge of the road and should have gone over the edge down a very steep precipice, except for the fact that there was a 4-inch square solid wooden post, not like the little posts that, you know, along the side of the road these days. That was anchoring us by my side door, apparently. I never knew this until I researched it with police reports, but the police reports when I wrote the book all said that car should have gone catapulting down the precipice, except for that solid wooden post.
And the kids even identified that in the moment, like saying, stay still, we're going to go over the edge.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I heard them saying that, and I'm thinking, really, what, how can, how can this be? You know, we'd all hit out because we'd ploughed right into the back of this timber jinker. I had a sore shoulder and head banged. One of the kids' nose was bleeding, and some other kids had been, badly bashed against the side of the vehicle, and it's all this element of surprise. Eastwood can't get out of the vehicle. He's stuck. The door won't open because it's been jammed shut with this impact of the accident. But he's able to wind his window down, and he climbs out the window and he pulls the gun on Robin Smith and his little brother David, and he basically gets them to lie down on the road, gets the chains off the children, and then chains them up and chains them to the back of the logging truck. But to get the children out and to get those chains out, he can't access the back of the vehicle because it's over this precipice. He has to smash the side of the vehicle, the glass panels, to get the children to go out through the window. So glass goes everywhere. Children get cut, and they're climbing out through the window where there's still bits of jagged glass. So it's not nice.
No, and going back to what I said at the beginning, like these kids are just extraordinary for everything that they went through on that day. How did Eastwood cope? This was obviously not part of his plan. How did he pivot once he was in this situation?
Yeah, good question. Sort of one thing at a time, really. He just sort of took it as it came. He stayed relatively calm. There was bits of discussions that took place. So he has to get me out of the vehicle. So he has to untie my hands from behind my back, and he takes the blindfold off. He'd already taken the gag off, thankfully, so that I could vomit. And he gets me to lie down on the road next to Robin and David. Once again, threatens us with the gun. You're trying to think smart, boys, and there will be claret along the road, stuff like that. So he's just threatening the adults. He's being reasonable to the children. He's not being mean, other than the fact that he's done the inappropriate thing.
How did it feel then to have two other adults in that situation alongside of you?
Yeah, so Eastwood's checking out things in the truck. He leaves us after he's chained us all up. He's beginning to steal things out of the truck, basically. He gets an axe out of Robin's truck and he wrecks his CB radio. He's worried that somebody could short circuit. Yeah. So Robin is able to talk to me a bit briefly and asks, "Who are you? Who? What's going on? Who is this bloke? Where did you come from?" So Robin's playing catch up as well, a bit like me the whole time. Um, and David, I don't think David said anything at that point. David's the younger 17-year-old brother. Robin's a 24 or 5-year-old man, a father of a couple of kids. So he's been around the area a lot, and he knows the area really well. I didn't fully realise that, but yeah. So how was Eastwood coping with all that? Yeah, one thing at a time, wondering what vehicle is going to be used to get us to where he's wanting to take us. He had a little campsite, which is another 2.5 hours away, waiting for him with a few supplies and a bit of water, a few tarpaulins, a few blankets, a bit of food.
And then the angels show up.
Yeah. Well, before the angels show up, Robin's second truck shows up with Robin's driver, Greg Peterson, comes from the same way from which we've come, and the road's blocked. You can't get through because the timbered Robin's truck and our vehicle are jammed up next to each other. And Greg Peterson pulls his truck up. Eastwood hears him coming and meets him as he's approaching and says, "Sorry, there's been an accident." Pulls a gun on Greg Peterson, and Greg's then ushered to the road to lie down. But Greg's also got a hitchhiker with him, Ian. Ian, whose surname I've forgotten right now, but he was hitchhiking that morning from Morwell, and Greg just happened to pick him up. He's just enjoying the ride. So now there's 5 men on the road chained up, and we're thinking he's going to give up now. He's going to go home, but his home was the jail, so he didn't want to go to jail, did he? Again, well, he ultimately did, but so yeah, those 4 blokes then become my best mates, and I'm thinking, surely I'm not going to get a bullet through my head, and surely 5 of us aren't going to get bullets through our heads, and maybe somehow we can overpower him.
So this is where the ladies come along.
Yeah.
I've listened to you speak about these women, Rob, and the reverence that you place on the role that they played in this is just extraordinary. It makes me a little bit teary, actually. They changed the dynamic completely.
Yeah. Thanks for introducing them as angels. That's sort of, in all intents and purposes, is what they were really. They became the oil in the to help things go smoothly. So they're coming the same direction from which Robin had come, and once again Eastwood meets them and pulls the gun on them and says, "Sorry, I need your vehicle, and you better come along too, because I don't want people loose lips giving the show away." But they stayed calm as cucumbers, really. If cucumbers are actually calm, I don't know why we say that, but and yeah, they loved those kids. They hugged them and they held their hands and they talked to them and they listened to them and played with them. I couldn't really get near the kids much throughout this whole ordeal, although the next period of time, for the next 2.5 hours, we're all 17 of us. I think I've got the numbers right. 17 of us jammed in this combi van that belongs to Joy Edward, and we're going again too fast along the Grand Ridge Road, going too fast towards his little hideout.
There was no way to sort of signal for help or anything as you're travelling along. Did you pass other cars on the way before you got to the campsite?
Hardly. We might have passed one or two, and they were bits of trucks and Eastwood would wave, and he said he'd threatened us all, if you guys try and signal to anybody, someone's going to get shot. So no one was game to hang out the window or jump out the door or do anything extraordinary. Yeah, so we then drive for another 2.5 hours to this hideout in not too far from a place called Woodside, which is near Yarram, southeast Gippsland, in the forest, Mullinjung State Forest, where he had his little campsite set up.
Yep. Again, another beautiful spot if you're in a different situation.
Yeah, from my point of view, it seemed like no one would ever find us. It was like the middle of nowhere, which wasn't as it. I've been back there subsequently, and it's not quite that. It's 10 kilometres from the main road, but it's off two little sub roads into the middle of a forest. I don't think anyone was going to see us. It was while we were driving that Muriel or Joy said, "Hey, you know who this guy is, don't you?" And we all said, "No, who is it?" And they said, "This is the guy who did Faraday, Eastwood." And that's when the penny dropped. It was just great to have six other adults, because there's the two women and then there's the four blokes and the two trucks. Six other adults with their heads together, A, supporting the children, but B, with a little bit of information and therefore moral support for me. I was able to relax to some extent despite the scariness of it.
So, what time of day are we sitting at around about now?
Yeah, so it's going to be about 5:30, 6 o'clock or something. 4:30, I'm not sure. So 5 hours of driving and a good hour and a half at the accident site, and we left around about 11 o'clock. So do the math. I think it's going to be about 6 or something. No daylight saving in 1977. So the sun would have set at I don't know, 7 o'clock, February the 14th. You'd think 7:30. So we had about 2 hours, I suppose, of daylight before it started settling. Us five blokes get chained around the tree. The women bargain with Eastwood and say, "We'll do exactly what you say. You don't need to chain us up. We'll look after the kids." And because they were mature 50-year-old women and Eastwood's a 25-year-old man, he's sort of, maybe, I know, he looks up to these ladies. They didn't threaten him at all, which meant that they were then able to sleep. The two women were able to sleep with the children and comfort them throughout this whole period.
Did the kids have something to eat, or was there any provisions made for them?
Yeah, well, he had a inadequate supply. He wanted one teacher and 9 children, not well, how many is there? 7 adults and
Yeah.
9 children. So he had a whole stack of chocolate, a stack of cigarettes, and a lot of tinned ham. They were the things that I remember. There might have been some other things too. There might have been some biscuits, a lot of milk, hardly any water, and thankfully the ladies had water in their combi van, and we were all able to have a drink of water. The milk was warm by that stage, and the children had drunk some while they were in the back of the vehicle. Actually, that's one nice little story. It comes out in the book, but I'd forgotten it. The children asked him, "Can we grab our bags? Because we've got our lunch in our bags." And he said, "Yeah, grab your bag." So thankfully, they all had a little bit of extra food in there for the day. Otherwise, we would have been a chronic shortage of food. But these tins of ham got passed around. Um, I think the women once again had sort of organised it with some of his supervision. Um, they'd cut it up into slices, and it was quite nice ham. It wasn't that real. There's spam ham and there's tinned ham.
Yep.
This was a nice tinned ham, which I can remember having as a kid and loving it. So we all got a bit of that. We all got a bit of chocolate, and as some of my friends are aghast about, I had a couple of cigarettes while the children weren't looking in the darkness of the night.
I don't think anybody could judge that at all, Rob. It was a tough
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
The men are still chained up. The women are sleeping with the kids. Were the kids able to go off to sleep okay once it sort of got dark?
Yeah, it was a fascinating atmosphere. So he has the radio going, and he's listening to the news bulletins in particular. And there's a lot of songs that continue to I hear right up to today. And that was one of the songs that I was listening to that night. Um, America's Greatest Hits and Eagles were the bands of the day, and quite a few of their songs therefore bring back these memories. But so the music's going, the news bulletins are there on the hour, and he's hanging out for news on the news. Um, and there's a lot of discussion in between times. Um, the Prime Minister, Malcolm Fraser, gets talked about. Ned Kelly gets talked about, crimes of the past. He wants to be the most notorious criminal that's ever lived. He wants this particular crime to be talked about forevermore. They're the sorts of discussions that took place. Yeah.
That must have been unnerving to have to listen to that, because you've got then going over in your mind, like so far he hasn't shot anyone, he hasn't hurt anyone, but if his desire is to be notorious, that doesn't fill anyone there with a sense of security.
No, that's right. That's right. Yeah. I don't think he wanted to kill anybody. Yeah, I don't think he wanted to shoot anybody, but I'm pretty sure if it had come to the crunch and we had have tried to overpower him or tried to attack him in any way, that gun would have been used to his advantage. And ultimately, there was a shootout when we're getting rescued, and the police were shot at. Any one of those policemen could have been shot, their lives lost.
Mm.
So, yeah, it's pretty scary.
And we know from his time in prison after this event that he is capable of murder.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yes. I forget the name of the guy. Do you remember the name of the guy that he's murdered? He murdered out of self-defense. Fair
He
enough.
claims self-defense. No, I can't remember his name, but I think he was in prison for raping a woman. And, yeah, he did eventually get off on that because it was classed as self-defense. But he's definitely capable.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I suppose prison's another kettle of fish. But still, yes, he was a violent man and a very silly man.
Yes. So you guys hunker down for the night. You're all still chained. I don't imagine it would have been a night full of restful sleep. How did that play out for you?
Yeah, so I reckon we might have been on a tarpaulin. It was February the 14th. It was a summer night, so it's pretty warm. I remember getting a jumper to put on. The ladies had given me a jumper because I was cool, but I didn't sleep. I didn't sleep. I didn't think I was going to sleep at all, but I must have, because at around about 6:30 a.m. I woke up and Robin's not there next to me.
Yep.
Robin's been able to sneak off.
So let's talk a bit
And
about his amazing mindset when you guys were allowed to go to the toilet and what he did to be able to facilitate what come after this.
yeah, so Robin's been very smart, very timely. He's playing it a bit like me. He's just one step at a time. He's considered attacking Eastwood at one stage, a bit like I had. I haven't mentioned this in this interview, but there was a time in the classroom when the gun was within reach, and I damn near grabbed the gun and tried to do something heroic, which could have been fatal. Um, but Robin's considered what he could do too, and we've talked a little bit about what might have been able to happen in this quiet time when Eastwood wasn't watching or wasn't within earshot. But basically, we were clueless as to what we were going to do. But at around about 5:30, 6 o'clock, 6:30, I'm not sure when, we all get a turn to go to the toilet and have a wee. And one at a time, we head off. Eastwood throws us a key for our lock, and we have to unlock it and then do it back up. And he wants to hear the click, do it up tight, make sure the chain's tight around your wrist. Only one wrist chained up. And Robin's the last person to have a wee. And I think he might have relaxed a little bit because, he was a bit worried. He stood back, making sure that five of us weren't going to pounce him. Um, Robin, as he's tying his chain up, has this bit of a epiphany thought. I'll twist some links. He used chains a lot while he was doing his logging and what have you. And if chains were twisted, it wasn't good because if they untwist, then they get slack. And so he twists his links as he's tying his chain up so that he was able to then later on untwist them and get a little bit of slack so that he could pull his hand out. It still wasn't easy. He damaged his thumb in the process. But unbeknownst to me, he was able to get his hand out, and he bided his time to when he thought Eastwood had gone to sleep. He'd had a big day. He must have been tired. He'd got up extra early in the morning to do a robbery, I suppose. He would have been up at the crack of dawn, and his adrenaline must have been. So the fact that he went to sleep at maybe 4:30 a.m. is not a surprise. So yeah, Robin thought there was just extra quietness, no stirs, and he had his boots off, and he crept through, hoping against hope that Eastwood wouldn't hear him, because if Eastwood had heard him, Robin would have been a dead man. Well, it would have got a bullet anyway. So Robin then gets away, puts his boots on, and then runs or jogs 10k to the South Gippsland Highway to the nearest farmhouse to try and raps on the door to try and get in it. This would have been at, I don't know, 6:30 in the morning probably. And it's an Italian farmer, an Italian man owns the place, and he doesn't speak English. And he can't work out what the hell, he's not going to let Robin in the house. But eventually his daughter, who spoke English, hears and knew about this, had heard a news bulletin that, somewhere along the South Gippsland Highway, be on the watch for suspicious activity or something. And she interpreted to her dad and allowed Robin in to make a phone call. And he rang the Yarram police, and the police were heading in our direction within minutes, picked him up from the farmhouse, and Robin was going to guide them to us. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Eastwood wakes up. Where's Singlet. Robin had been called Singlet because he was wearing a blue singlet. Where's Singlet? Don't know. When did he go? Not sure. Well, all hell broke loose. Eastwood panicked. That was a scary moment, perhaps as scary as any of the moments, really, because he lost it emotionally. Piled us all into the van, and off we set again. Lots of threats and yells and swearing and abuse to everybody. And he heads, as it turns out, in the wrong direction. He heads towards the police, towards the South Gippsland Highway, and we come across a nest of police, basically. There's a high-speed chase, and he starts shooting. We have to go through roadblocks. We go through 2 roadblocks. Well, probably 3, really, if the first one is counted, because there was the first car said stop, and he just ignored it. And then there was 2 roadblocks that we went through. And it was at the second roadblock that our tyres got shot out and he had to stop. But leading up to that moment, with shots being fired, some of the shots went in wrong spots. We had bullet holes, in the combi van that could have easily damaged, killed, hurt, got one of the children or one of us.
So he had made it back to Sale, is that right, before the police actually apprehended him?
Yeah, we're on the road to Sale.
Mm-hmm.
We're somewhere near a place called Stradboat. We're probably half an hour from Sale.
Yeah, right, okay.
Yeah. That's an interesting moment when our vehicle gets stopped. Our tyres get shot out. Eastwood then gets out of the vehicle, puts his hands in the air, and the police shoot him in the leg only. I think if it was today, and certainly if it was in the US, he would have been shot to bits. He was very lucky to get out with his life, really. So yeah, they shot him in the leg. Police believed that he still had his gun in his hand and that he got out shooting. No, he exhausted his bullets, but the police didn't know that.
No.
They heroically ambushed the car, basically ran as soon as he stopped, and they didn't know they were not going to get any bullets in them, and put handcuffs on him and took him away.
And you guys are still locked in the back of the Combi at this stage?
Yeah, and us 5 blokes are. Well, no, there's only 4 blokes now, isn't there? Because Robin's gone.
Yep.
Us 4 blokes are still chained up, and Eastwood's got the keys. Yeah, so we were chained for a bit longer than we should have been.
Yeah.
Eventually, one of the cops found the keys in Eastwood's pocket and was able to work out how to get the keys, get our chains off.
I bet that was a good feeling.
Yeah. It's just a crazy time, really. You wouldn't read about it.
Well, you would if people read your book. They would read about it.
You can now, yeah.
Yeah, but in Australia there was just nothing apart from Faraday, obviously, but it just hostage situations like this, they just weren't a regular occurrence. And so for Eastwood to think that, he didn't get away with it the first time, he didn't get away with it the second time, but why he would think that that would be a possibility for him, I can't get my head around that with any type of rational thought. But the other part is the people that get drawn into it. We talk a lot on this podcast about the aftermath of crime or difficult situations, And the impact is not just for the people who experience it, it's for the families of the people who experience it, it's for the police officers. And thankfully, in your situation, no one was harmed physically. There's a lot there. And in the late 70s, I don't imagine we had the understanding of trauma and how we process that in the same way that we do now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No counselling whatsoever. So we go back to Sale Police Station, and this is the extent of the counselling in some respects. The police were lovely. I couldn't speak highly enough of them, really. They were very supportive and empathetic. Empathetic is probably a good word, better than sympathetic. They asked all of us lots of questions, and we were able to make long statements. In a sense, I suppose that's a bit of an ordeal too, but at least it was a complete debrief in a way. Really, you want to do a debrief over a period of weeks, months, years, I suppose, but nobody else really. Wasn't able to have a debrief with anybody else really. My friends and my family asked lots of questions, but they didn't want to traumatize me anymore. I think they
Yep.
didn't want it to hurt me anymore. They wanted just to let me get over it. But we now know that to really be able to get over stuff, you've got to talk it through and let it and name it for what it is, create a new reality or create the reality, and to be able to deal with it properly and explore the feelings, and with the help of somebody else, then be able to let it go.
So I think this is a really great place to finish up today's episode. Rob is going to join us again next week because stories like this one aren't just heard, they're felt, and they live in your body and in the quiet spaces between words. Today, we've walked through Rob's experiences and the experiences of those who were there with him, and a moment in time that has reshaped everything that has followed for Rob himself, and I imagine many of the other people in this story. We've heard what it was like to be young and responsible for others and suddenly faced with something that no one could ever prepare for. We're deeply grateful for Rob for trusting us and you with this part of his story. And next week we'll return not to the place where it happened, but we're going to dive into the person who lived it. We'll talk about what came after, about healing, about meaning, and about how experience becomes wisdom. And we'll discuss what one life deeply shaped by a traumatic experience can go on to offer others. Thanks for being with us here today, Rob. And thanks to you guys who are listening for doing so with care. And we will meet you all here next week with our new friend Rob for our very first episode of What Would They Say?
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of If These Trees Could Talk. If you would like to access more about the places or information included in today's topic, please visit our website ifthesetreescouldtalk.com.au. If you would like to follow us on our adventures, check us out on Facebook or Insta. Our creative writer is Shannon Walters, and our podcast is produced at Bellevue Studio in the Hunter Valley with audio production by Megan Anderson. We love to hear your feedback, so please rate and review, and if you would like to hear more, please subscribe. We look forward to you joining us for our next adventure.